Hey everyone, I don't know about you, but I'm ready for some coffee. My favorite spot, because of the people, because of the coffee beans, all the good stuff, is Cafe 211 in Bentonville. If you're not in the Northwest Arkansas area, though, Cafe 211 also offers their beans and their coffee mugs deliverable, I think, nationwide. So you can create that whole experience from your home. Mauricio Guerrero is the founder of Cafe 211. He is from Guatemala and his coffee is from Guatemala as well. There's a beautiful story that's tied to it. I encourage you to check out the Cafe 211 website, check out Mauricio's story, the story of the coffee and the people who make it, and go ahead and buy some and we can sip it together during our next conversation. And you can use the discount code Cara Elvira 10 to get a 10% discount on your order. Yeah. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good morning, Kristen. How are you today?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. It must be like a Friday feeling that I'm rushing towards the end of the day. I'm just like, all right, let's put it at afternoon already. This is not, it's not actually 9 a.m. It can't be. No, but I don't want to rush through this at all. I'm so excited to be here with you and so appreciative that you take the time to speak with me on this rainy Friday morning. So without going any further, this is Kristen Orr. You are an artist, designer, and biologist, a combination I'm super excited to speak about with you. So Kristen, I'd like to begin, if you would, with your personal background and your origin of these interesting combination of interest in science and art.
Sure. So I think it's sort of similar to most people. Your really core interests are something you were born with. Like it's something that you can't really pinpoint the origin of it. It just sort of is part of you and has always been a part of you. Um, and so that is the case with my love of art and science. Like they've they've both been there from the beginning, and yeah, it's sort of I've just been drawn to all things animals, plants, bugs, as well as different art forms, specifically visual art, painting, and printmaking and drawing. So
That's awesome. I'm trying to envision like childhood Kristen in her art classes and her science classes. Are you like the first one to elect to do the dissection? Like, are you, do you have any like standout moments from, um,
well, I just remember because I found these old nature notebooks, from when I was like 8 years old. I have these like experiments where I've like illustrated ants and like I've tried to catch them in little containers and see what food they like. And, so I called it my art and science notebook. So anyway, it's been there from the beginning.
that's amazing. And at that point in time, had anyone already planted the seed that art and science could be together, or you were just having this like natural, like synthesis of the two?
I think it was a natural thing. I mean, it's possible I saw something that sort of like helped me connect them, but I I I do have a feeling that like later in life when I started realizing that other people were doing it, it was sort of like an aha moment. Like uh, I was glad that there were other people out there like me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Always nice to find our community. So you continued on that journey of getting your education in these areas. You went to RISD, which is a little known school in Rhode Island, a pretty big deal. I'd love to hear about what you studied there and how that continued to kind of like hone your craft.
Sure. Yeah. I think selecting a college to go to was a real challenge for me because I had these two pretty like different interests, and it felt like I was choosing one interest over the other. And you know, I guess I was deciding if I pick one, how can it lead me back to the other? So I picked RISD thinking that art and design could lead me back to science, um, as opposed to the other way around. And so, yes, went to RISD. It was great. I studied industrial design. which is a 3D design. It's sort of a very broad study of materials and objects and how humans interact with them. So I guess probably my sophomore year, I had an advisor there who, I shared that I had these two interests, art and science, and she was like, "Oh, like I have the perfect path for you. Like I think museum exhibit design would be a fantastic use of your industrial design skills." And it was a field that I had not heard of, but the more I looked into it, the more perfect it did seem, because it would allow me to use the skills I was gaining at RISD to communicate scientific information to the public in entertaining and beautiful ways.
Oh my gosh, like what a perfect match. And I love how it came from you just articulating what your intersections of interest were. I think sometimes I could feel like nervous. I'm like, this is so weird. Like no one's going to get it. Like I'm just not going to talk about it. But you happen to talk to the right person, and then you end up in the perfect place that you were meant to be. So I think that's really encouraging. And I like to, you mentioned this degree in industrial design and how like the museums were not top of mind for you, right? So the people who were going into this course of study, maybe they had other interests that were not museums. Can you speak about like what an industrial design degree is?
Yes. So I think the traditional like path after you get an industrial design degree would be product design. And that is also broad. So product design can be physical objects. You can think about anything that is man-made, like cars, utensils, iPhones, really anything is designed by someone, and that is the role of the product designer or industrial designer. There's also digital industrial designers, so user experience designers who are designing interfaces, websites, and apps. So it's a lot about, it's thinking about how a human interfaces with an object or a program. So yeah, that's sort of a very broad overview of industrial design.
That's awesome. I think, when we had spoke, maybe our first time you talked about like the different people you get to interact with in that kind of role, it must be just really great exposure to different fields and definitely interdisciplinary. During your time at RISD, were you also involved in like a nature lab or something, or how does that fit into
Yes.
your story?
Yes. So RISD has this really famous nature lab. At least, I don't know, maybe it's not that famous.
I think word for it.
It's very near and dear to my heart. But it's this fantastic collection of natural history objects like skulls and feathers and bones and eggs. And it serves as a resource for all of the artists and designers kind of passing through RISD as inspiration, reference. And so I found out about the nature lab once I got there, and I was like, I have to work here. This is perfect. So it was a way of getting a little more science into the mix for me, kind of getting that balance back where it felt good. And yeah, I worked there I think I worked there 3 years of my time there, but did some projects, met some like-minded people, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
It's amazing. I think to me what really resonates there is that you were like kind of crafting your own like curriculum inside and outside of the classroom. Like people who have a vision that's maybe not completely like mainstream, like you kind of have to take it on yourself a little bit to like, okay, what are the experiences I need to have to be qualified to do this thing that's a little bit more niche. And so I love how you like supplemented what you were learning in class that was like technical design with this experience that was more in the sciences. I think it's a great learning and encouragement for others.
Yeah.
God. So you mentioned how industrial design ended up really equipping you well to work in museum spaces and sharing scientific information. So I'd like to talk now about your exhibit design works. We're at RISD graduation or whatever point in time is like the beginning of the next chapter. Where do you go from there? What is your next step?
So before graduating, I had identified exhibit design as the field that I wanted to pursue. And so like summers between school, I would get an internship at a local museum. I got one at the Providence Museum of Natural History and the Providence Children's Museum. Then a subsequent summer, I got an internship at the American Museum of Natural History in New York, and slowly got some experience. A museum exhibit takes an incredibly long time to create, sometimes years. So those short little summer experiences were only like a tiny little snippet of the experience. And but I was slowly kind of collecting all of the parts. And then after graduation, I got an internship at the Smithsonian, specifically Smithsonian Exhibits, which is an office that works with all of the museums. And that internship led to a job. I was hired for 2 years there. And yeah, I guess I could keep going.
That's wonderful. And thank you. I wanted to understand a little bit. You mentioned how these exhibit projects are a really long timeline and the internships were sort of briefer. Like what point in the project did you come in, and what is the bigger picture like process for an exhibit from inception to like, I guess, completion?
Yeah. So,
In a nutshell, of course.
Yeah, really short.
Things.
So in addition to taking a long time, it takes a huge group of people. So I'd say the first step is conceptualization. What is this exhibit going to communicate? That's, higher ups in the museum and content developers. So once a theme subject is identified, there's a lot of research that happens into the subject, kind of brainstorming, mood boards, things like that. Then the content developers really come in and they actually write a script, sort of like a screenplay, sort of what the experience will be like as a person walks through an exhibit. Then a designer comes in to try to make physical this experience. So what is this actually going to look like? What objects will the visitor be able to interact with? What panels, what they will communicate, the path through the space, things like that. Yeah, so that was a very, very brief overview. There's many other steps.
Oh, I'm sure of it, but I thank you for trying to suck it up in like a second. That was not easy, but I think you did a really good job. So I want to talk about some of your favorite projects here as like an example, but also I love in your reflecting on this exhibit design work, you spoke about using design as an educational tool. And I wanted to see if you could speak a little bit more about what that means to you.
Yeah, I think that's probably my favorite. Well, I don't know about favorite part, but a part about exhibit design that I think is really special. It's a way to use design to communicate really any information to the public, like in a large scale. Sometimes, I think more than multiple thousands of people would come by and experience an exhibit that I had created. And there was something very cool and rewarding about my design having an impact where it can reach so many people and communicate scientific information that I find really interesting and hope that I can share that interest with others. So that, yeah, exhibit design as this educational tool always really, really interested me.
Yeah, I think it's so impressive how the museums and everyone who works in exhibit design, you have to think about people entering the exhibit from so many different walks of life, right? And so many different um, abilities. And I think designing like universally and also making sure
Yes.
that each person has like a really special and intimate experience with it. It's just like, what a cool skill and a valuable one for not just museums, but like any space where you need to share information, like you said.
Universal design is a huge part of exhibit design and a huge part of industrial design as well. It's how can like have anyone really, like you were saying, from all walks of life, all shapes and sizes, how can they interact with this and have a pleasurable experience?
Oh my gosh, I could geek out about that for days. I don't know anything, but I'm very curious about it. And so I'm going to keep probably bugging you in our lives to learn your awesome knowledge. Let's talk about some of the projects you worked on as examples of this education through the exhibits. Like the power of poison sounds pretty fun.
I'll show some photos. Okay. Yeah, so I pulled together a few of my favorite exhibit design projects. This was one of them. It was an early project during my internship at the American Museum of Natural History, but sort of my first significant role in an exhibit. I was tasked with trying to create a scene that showed several poison mysteries and how visitors would sort of approach this and try to figure out how this accidental poisoning had happened. So I created several little shadow boxes. Here you see like an owl who has been poisoned, and you have to figure out what happened. But it was so cool. It was the first time that I had designed something and then came back a few months later and saw it full size, like in the exhibit space. So there were 3 shadow boxes like this.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So, this is a small part of the exhibit, but
that moment when you see your work, like achieving a purpose of this huge organization that I don't know about you, but I like certainly look up to.
Yeah.
I think that just must have meant so much.
Yeah, I was emotional.
So cool. But what a great like foundation, like a building block to all the other things you continued to
So
pour into these institutions.
I can show a few more early
Yeah,
projects.
I'd love to.
So this was sort of a personal project that I did at RISD that became one of my favorites. So I was using sort of the display cabinets at the Nature Lab to think about different ways that we could display natural history objects. So if you've been to natural history museums, generally things are classified based on organisms. So, you'll see all the birds together, or you'll see all of the butterflies together, or it will be organized based on ecosystem and environment, very scientific themes. And I wanted to kind of bring an artistic lens to natural history displays. And so I decided to group them based on color, kind of purely based on color. And yeah, I had a great time with it, and people really enjoyed it. It was
I love this one. I get like that Pantone vibe from it. And also I think it does make it more accessible because it is at face value, it feels like less scientific and more fun and color coordinated. And it reminds me of like, I feel like it's very on trend now to have your bookcase be organized by color, right? But this
right.
is
And hopefully it would, I don't know, draw people in that wouldn't normally be drawn in by natural history displays.
Yeah, I think too, like, sometimes when I'm needing like inspiration, I'll reorganize my room or I'll like put things in a different space. And I think by you organizing these things by color, even if like there wasn't at the forefront or like a complete like a reason other than just the style and doing it differently and incorporating art, I think it does make people have new like connections in their
Hmm.
brain or associations. And I'd be interested to hear like what people learn from these objects when they're grouped like this versus when they're grouped in another way.
Right. And you can ask scientific questions about it as well. So why are all of these things green? In what way is the pigment created? Like, is it the same? Is it different? Um, yeah, what is the like evolutionary reason for this color to exist? So,
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, it like flips the world on its head, or it makes you, right, consider different qualities than you would
right.
when they're matched by organism or other science thing that I don't know. No, I love this one. And you had another one was the Nature Lab collection, is that?
So a similar name, also called the Nature Lab, but a different location. This was another personal project early on, where I photographed all of the objects in this Nature Labs collection and created um, a wallpaper pattern as well as a magnet board where people could rearrange all of the images to create their own designs. So just wanted to show
Oh
a
my
few.
gosh, I love. So how did you come up with this idea just like out of thin air? Like what was the inspiration? Because it's so clever.
Thanks. So um, this was when I was working at the Smithsonian, but this was not part of my like official job. Sort of during my free time, I would contact small little natural history museums and ask if they wanted to collaborate on a project or just do something with their collection that was fun and artistic.
Mhm.
And everyone was always very willing to collaborate. And so yeah, this was just sort of a fun project that I sort of initiated, but then there was a collaboration with that nature lab.
I feel like maybe there should be a wallpaper business in your future. Like these are so fun. And they're so like, sciencey for like a little kid's room.
Yeah.
I think you're onto something.
Thanks.
I love it. And again, it sparks like curiosity. Like I would look at those things on a shelf and be just like so overwhelmed. Like, I don't know what year this is from. I don't know anything. But here it's like, oh, I can move it. That's
Right. And you can explore the shapes in a way that you can't, if say the display is hands off, like if you can't touch it, now you've got this display where you can like manipulate and look up close and explore in a different way.
Yes. I've been so fortunate in these conversations to get to know a few people in the museum world. And every time I speak with you guys, I envision like that night at what is that? The movie. Yeah. And I wonder if like before we pivot to your personal projects, you have any cool, like special memories from these museums that are shareable. Because I'm sure so many cool things happen there.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of my cooler museum memories are. I'm gonna stop sharing real quick. My
Sure.
cool museum memories are walking through the museum when it's closed and empty, and my footsteps are echoing through the space. Specifically in the American Museum of Natural History, I would
Oh my gosh.
be there before opening time, and I would walk through this hall of dioramas, these scenes with taxidermied animals, and yeah, it was such an impressive experience. So yeah,
I love that. And you can just picture like all the history that's happened there and the other
yes,
who've walked there and
yes, it gives you chills.
completely. And I think I love making that kind of experience happen. So for instance, our school was completely remote this last year, right? But when finals finished, I went over to the campus of the University of Arkansas and I went to Old Main, which is the oldest building. And I just put on like some jazz music on my iPhone, like stood in the rain, just like, wow, like I finished a semester of grad school. Like who thought that would happen? And I think you add to that, like the Museum of Natural History, which was this really cool goal. And achievement of this intersection you wanted to be in. Like, I can't imagine how special that would be for the rest of us who can't be there when it's closed. What's your favorite like pocket of space, whether it's at Smithsonian or Natural History or any of the museums you worked at, or maybe it's like generally at every museum you go in this corner and it's really the best place to be.
Oh, was that a question? What's my
So
favorite?
like, yeah, is there a special space in the in the museum? Like for me at the Met, there's that room with all the windows, and like to just stand in the corner, like sit in the corner there for some time and like draw or write to me is the most precious experience. But I wonder if there's this pocket that's special to you.
Well, probably the corridor with all of the dioramas in the American Museum of Natural History. That's probably like the really special spot. You sit on a bench and sketch. I agree that like being in a museum in sort of a contemplative state is the best. I don't often love walking around the entire thing, but yeah, sitting down and slowing down is the best way to enjoy a museum.
Next time I get to be in that dioramas section, I'm going to be thinking of you and remembering this conversation, which is going to be such a nice memory. So thank you. And let's talk next about some of your personal projects. So you are not just doing this for work, but for fun. And I'm excited to see how that manifests.
Yeah, I think I can pull up some images. I wanted to show one project in particular. Here it is. Right, so like you said, in addition to my like professional work in exhibit design, I want to work on more artistic projects, and often work with my really close friend and fellow artist, Kate Fleming. So this project, we're calling it In My Backyard, and it is all about North Carolina ecosystems. So I'm from North Carolina, she's from Arlington, Virginia, but we decided to take a road trip across North Carolina and stop in 7 unique ecosystems from the mountains down to the coast. And in each ecosystem, we drew and sketched and painted. She captured the colors of the ecosystem, and I captured the species and the textures. And then we combined our observations to create these prints that you see here.
That is so cool. And Kate has been on this this YouTube channel also, so people should check out our conversation. She's a really cool lady as well, and I love that you guys did this together.
Wait, have you really interviewed Kate?
I
Do you
have
mean
from the road, yeah, in her van.
what? I didn't know that. That's wild.
Yes, she's super cool, just like you. So I'm not surprised that you guys are friends. But yeah, no, she's so sweet. And we had a great conversation. So all of us will have to get together at some point because it would mean the world. But not to distract from this. So I love that you guys embarked on a project together. Was there a purpose at the end of it? Like, what did you do with these prints once they were created, or was it just for the joy of the journey, which I think is pretty special and epic too?
So, I still have the prints here. We have yet to find, an outlet for these. So we had planned to create a book, and I think that might still happen. When you do printmaking, you can make multiple copies of the same design. So we have probably 20 prints of each design. But we also are hoping to have a show with our process work and our final products. So yeah, it's in the works.
I will be staying tuned. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. And what are these? You mentioned there's like 7 different ecosystems in North Carolina. That's cool.
Well, we sort of, we selected ones that were really different. So we picked the balds of Western North Carolina. There are these mountains that are treeless. As one of them, it's the center image here is from the balds of the Appalachians. The one on the left is from Carolina Beach State Park, so very coastal colors. And then on the right, we have the green swamp, which is an incredibly unique habitat. It's a swamp or a bog, and it's the only native location of Venus flytraps. It's the only place in the world where Venus flytraps come from.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
any pocket of North Carolina. So very unique and
Unique.
yeah.
So I know you already like you came into this project with your love of science and art together. And I know Kate, at least her love of art, I don't know about nature, but um, I'm personally maybe a bit of an introvert. So usually I'll go do projects by myself. And I think what's really cool here is the collaboration. And I notice like the times that I do muster up the courage and the energy to go work with other people, it ends up being like better than it could have ever been, where I see the world totally differently. And I wondered if you had any of those sort of experiences in working with Kate as a collaborative like artist rather than just as BFFs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think working with another person, it's sort of, it removes some of the doubt, the self-doubt that you might have when you're pursuing a personal project. You have this other person who's beside you saying, yes, this is a good idea. And I think it's more likely to make projects happen when you have that other person there, because self-doubt can stop you from pursuing a project or an idea. So who knows, if I had not, I mean, actually, I have no doubt that if I did not collaborate with Kate Fleming on this project, it would not have happened. So yeah.
Thank goodness for cool artsy friends. And I do agree that there is such like, for me at least, like built-in like accountability when you have another person involved. Like I have to show up and do this because I said I was going to do it. And once I'm there, I'm going to love it. But
Right.
there's a lot of like that hesitation before you get started. And there were some other personal projects I think that you worked on that maybe we get to talk about.
Yeah, I don't have images of them, but I, did some zines and animation. I think like when you're a creative person, you're just always trying to do some side projects that pique your interest. And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I've like been around the word zine, but I don't actually like really know what constitutes a zine. And I like to on this channel like just like break down any word that we come across that's like even remotely specific to creativity. So could you speak to what a zine is?
Sure. I'm looking around to see if I have one. I don't think I have one nearby, but yeah, zines are great. They're very accessible little booklets of art, often made by just kind of amateur people who are doing it for fun. They're generally made on like a typical sheet of printer paper, 8.5 by 11, that's folded in a particular way. And I think the term zine comes from magazine, but it's small.
Oh my
So
God, I love that.
but yeah, just an easy way to display and distribute uh, any work that you want.
It's so helpful even to know that it's a truncated version of magazine. I'm here thinking it's like German or something.
No.
Like, oh, duh, like that makes sense.
Tiny magazine.
Amazing. No, I love that you mentioned this. Like just need to be working on different creative things. I feel like maybe this channel is like a way that I try to do that for myself. Because if I'm not, I just feel like half of myself or not fully involved in the world around me. So that's cool encouragement too. It's not every project has to be with this explicit monetary gain or to get you to the next step. It's just like
Right.
your brain needs to be active in that way for it to be able to do all the other things. And I think that that's a really cool example. Speaking of your brain being active in other things, you're back in school now too, right? So I'd love to hear more about that journey and what you're studying right now.
Yeah. So I am back in school for biology, getting a master's in biology at East Carolina University. And, it a lot of people are like, whoa, that's a huge change. Like you were a museum designer and now you're studying biology. Like, what is that? And so I don't know. For me, it doesn't feel like that big of a change. Biology and art have always been part of who I am and my work. So it just feels like a continuation. But it sort of the impetus of starting this program was just feeling that the art and science balance was a little off, and trusting my gut. It was telling me, okay, things are getting a little design heavy, and you're not really involved in as much science as I think you'd really like. So I really dove into science by starting this master's program, but have not at all given up designing. I feel like I'm constantly using my design skills here in grad school. So.
Yes, a grad school is a great place to see where different sets of knowledge can come together because your projects are usually, I don't know, from my experience, they've been abstract enough that I can bring in like the
Right.
experience I've had before it. But I think there's a lot to be said about trusting your gut. And that was just like that's not a passive thing. Like that was not, I can't imagine that is always easy. It's not been easy for me. And I'd like to hear a little bit, if you wouldn't mind sharing, about what were the hardest parts of trusting your gut?
Yeah. Well, I feel like the voice that's speaking to you in your gut is very quiet. And so if you, I don't know, kind of push it away or ignore it, it's super easy to drown it out with other people's opinions, um, what other people think, your own insecurities. But letting that voice really speak up and kind of giving it a megaphone, I think leads to so many good things. Um, it's never a bad idea to trust your gut, and it's silly that we often do sort of ignore it. But
Do you have any advice or best practices or ways that you've like made space or reduced the volume of the other things so that you could like hear your gut and respond to it?
I mean, definitely like quieting down, journaling. Sometimes meditation helps, and like specifically uh, like going to your core and like asking what it needs. That's something I often do.
Yeah, no, I love to hear what works for different people because I think it's really hard and our lives are so much richer when we are like actually trying to be attuned to
Right.
what we're supposed to do and not just what other people think we're supposed to do, which is great. They're well intentioned, but they just might not know.
And it takes work. It's not something, I think your personal voice doesn't always like shout at you. So it takes work to kind of get quiet and listen for it.
Yes. And I love that you find yourself now back in the Carolinas. You're at East Carolina University, you said, but that was pretty intentional as well, right? Why did you choose this institution?
Right. So like you said, I'm from North Carolina, and I think in my heart, I wanted to return. Um, I had been in Boston and DC and all these big cities and was ready to be back here. But specifically East Carolina University, I think when you're picking a grad school, it's really important that you have an advisor that you connect with. And I found that here. It also is a school that is not like overly competitive or intimidating. And that was also something I was looking for. I did not want like internal competition to be something I was dealing with. specifically, since I was coming with an unusual background.
Right.
And kind of another point that drew me here was a world-renowned bird park was nearby. It was Sylvan Heights Bird Park, and it's a fantastic resource for anyone in Eastern North Carolina. And I was able to work on a research project there, which, has been great.
I think it's so insightful that you found like not the best school for everyone, but clearly the best school for you, right? And just in a great alignment of your different interests and the pace you wanted it to be at, and appropriate emphases on the things that you wanted to emphasize. So I think that's really good encouragement as well for people going back to school for grad school or for school in general. And you mentioned having an advisor too, and those human relationships being just so pivotal to understand what you're doing. There's no framework for what it means to go to grad school. Everyone can do it differently. And so I think that's great for making lowering the barrier of intimidation as well, and just getting excited about it. So you mentioned before that you've been able to use both skill sets in pursuing this degree and in your life currently. Could we speak more about that?
Sure, and I can show some photos.
Yay.
always
Love it. Very cool learner.
So not specifically related to my degree here, but during my time here, I was contracted to do some scientific illustrations, which I've really not done a ton of it, but I really loved it and I'm hoping to do some more. I did about 14 illustrations for E.O. Wilson's Tales from the Ant World. And E.O. Wilson is one of my biology superheroes. And so it was like the project of a lifetime to work on this.
Oh my gosh. So how did that opportunity come about? And for the people who don't know as well, who is E.O. Wilson?
E.O. Wilson is a kind of world-renowned ant scientist, and the term for ant scientist is myrmecologist. And he's written tons of books. I think he's probably written more than 20 books for the general public, kind of getting everyone excited about the natural world and our connection with it. But this project came about through sort of a bizarre connection. I feel like that's usually how projects happen, kind of how you least expect it. But I went to Harvard's Museum of Comparative Zoology when I was living in Boston and attended a lecture there, sat next to a woman who, I started talking to, and she was also interested in art and science. So we exchanged contact information, and we worked on a few projects together. But then one day she contacted me and said, "Have you ever illustrated ants before?" I said no, but she told me that her advisor, E.O. Wilson, was looking for an illustrator for an upcoming book. And so she said, "Okay, well, why don't you send him some illustrations and see if he is interested?" And he was. So
That's so cool. It brings me back to what you were saying earlier too, though. When you were a kid, you were drawing the ants, right? And you're putting them. So I think this is so full circle, right? Now you're actually really officially drawing the ant.
right.
That's pretty
detail.
Oh my gosh, what an epic journey though, and just putting yourself in the place and letting the rest happen. That's so cool. And your name's in the book, and you this author. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this one.
Yeah. And then I've got some other personal projects. I did some illustrations for one of my advisors. He studies manakins, which are these really colorful birds, and is sequencing their genomes and going to be publishing it. So these gouache paintings that I did of the different species will be in the paper, scientific paper.
I like take for granted. I mean, I'm remembering now my science textbooks growing up, and like someone had to draw those things. Someone had to.
Right.
I'm like, they're science. Like they're just there. No, that doesn't make any sense. That's wow. I love this. That's so cool. And they're very distinctive birds. I've never.
They are, right. They're very closely related, but yeah, very different plumage. And then, let's see, another project I did in grad school was I collaborated with the designers at Sylvan Heights Bird Park to help them create this Photoshop rendering of an upcoming exhibit that they were creating. So they were developing a new aviary and needed to give people an idea of what the exhibit would look like. And so I created this sort of this image to help people see what the exhibit would look like once it was finished.
And this did this come about because they knew your interest in the bird park and your other competencies, or like how did this one?
Yeah, so they I think I told them about my exhibit design skills, and yeah, they wanted to,
Like we could use that.
yeah, right to utilize that.
That's so cool. So when you say that you told them about your skills, do you mean that like you walked in one day and you said, "Hi, nice to meet you. I'm in school here now," or like because I think maybe people would like to be doing that more, but they're not sure even like the appropriate way to put themselves out there. Was it more of a
Right.
progressive relationship kind of building? Maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, sure. I think it started by communicating to my advisors that it was something that I wanted to continue using. I wanted to continue using my design skills in any way that I could. And I expressed to them that I would love to help out the bird park. And then I think they contacted the bird park and sort of made the connection there. And so then I did go in and meet with the designers there. But yeah, I had someone to sort of introduce me, which always helps.
Yes, I'm seeing now why the advisor is so important to you. That's a really cool internal advocate, and made so many cool things possible. So no, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then one last project I wanted to show was a map that I designed using citizen science data from eBird, which it's a website where anyone, any bird watcher or bird lover, can go and record bird sightings that they've seen. So I thought this was a perfect art and science collaboration because I used the data from all of those sightings to pinpoint locations in North Carolina where chimney swifts roost. So I don't know if you or anyone watching knows about chimney swifts, but they're some of my favorite birds. They do some really bizarre things in the evening on summer nights. They go to roost in chimneys, often in massive flocks, and they almost vortex down into the chimney right before sunset. And so I've mapped out these locations in North Carolina where you're likely to see that happen.
Oh my gosh, that's such a cool road trip idea too. Now I feel like I have to meet my sister and we have to go.
Right.
Wow. And I'm worried about the chimney swift birds though. Like, is anyone like checking to make sure that they're not in their chimney?
Well, so think about it, like, no one's really lighting a fire in the summer. So they're migratory. So during the winter, they go down, I'm pretty sure they go down to South America, Central America, where they roost oftentimes in hollow logs that are, standing up still. But yeah, I mean, usually they're abandoned buildings where chimney swifts are living in the chimneys.
Okay, so they have a strategy. They're not, they're pretty smart. Um, this, this was for a class project that you did this?
Yeah.
And are you gonna show it to the people who have this website? Because I feel like this is
Yeah, I did. I shared it with them. They promoted it on their, I think, on their Twitter, but that was sort of that was sort of the extent of it.
oh my gosh, that's amazing though. I feel like just interactive like data storytelling is a whole other wormhole we could get into,
Oh
but
yeah.
such a powerful skill. I'm really impressed. So I'm just so thankful for all of the different things you've shared today. And I want to abstract a bit and ask you, like, why does design matter? And why should everyone have like a little bit of knowledge about design in their everyday life?
Yeah, so this is something I definitely believe. Um, Design it's like a way of thinking about the world. Um, it's a way of kind of finding a problem or an issue and creating the solution that solves it. Um, it's about physical solutions, like what can I make or change about the physical world or even the digital world, um, that can make this better. And so it can be applied to literally any field. Um, you know, I've seen it applied to government, um, education. I'm sort of blanking now, but I can't really think of a field where design cannot be applied.
Right.
Yeah.
I think one of the most powerful and impactful things you said was just how it makes you think about how can I fix or change anything that I don't like how it's working. And so to have that's the mindset of a designer, I think, in a nutshell. And that's just really empowering. It opens a lot of doors. It changes your mindset probably on what's possible. And I think, yeah, like you said, anyone could benefit from that. You also mentioned like design is a mechanism for addressing things that are not working, right? My favorite example of design thinking is like the invention of the first like user-friendly mouse, but I think people are getting a little tired of me using that story. And I wondered if you have any favorite examples of design or like the go-to ones that in design school they talk to you about, because I keep sharing the same story.
Hmm. Let's see. Well, I'm just thinking about a project I worked on. Um, NASA had, so this was in at RISD in design school. Um, Oftentimes companies will come to RISD to get ideas, have them kind of work with students. Anyway, this class was collaborating with NASA, and the organization was trying to figure out how to create a repair shop on a spaceship. So it would need to contain any particles that are created in the low gravity situation. So, you think about when you're repairing or building or creating something, oftentimes there's bits flying everywhere, but that can't happen on a spaceship. There are very intense filtration systems, and things can go terribly wrong if particles are floating everywhere. So we had to design a way for people to repair things without those particles going everywhere. So it's thinking about any problem and figuring out, okay, what can we do about it? How can we fix it?
I love that example. And oh my gosh, I just keep saying it, but it's so cool. Like that's awesome. What a special experience. And I think it's inspiring to anyone who's wanted to explore design, because I'd like to work with NASA. That sounds pretty epic. What is your advice to people who are trying to pursue a combination of interests? I think that's been like really strong theme throughout this that I'm so thankful has come up.
Yeah, I think I do want to speak directly to people that want to pursue multiple interests, because when I was trying to pursue them, I didn't have a ton of people like, championing me. And so I want to support people that, that have multiple interests. And sort of the biggest point is that I think we're all complex, and we all have diverse interests. And it doesn't seem right to put ourselves in a box or try to, I don't know, say that I am only one thing and kind of cut off all your other interests. Another bit of advice would be to embrace DIY or do it yourself. It's a lot of what I've done in the past has been sort of DIY, where maybe an opportunity didn't exist that I wanted, and so me and my friend Kate often just made it happen. And similarly, reach out to people that are your role models. So, there doesn't have to be a job posting for you to contact someone. It doesn't have to be a call. Like you can make that happen, make that connection.
Yes, I think it's almost better when there's not a job posting, because it to me, it evokes a different sort of sincerity. Like I really do just want to learn about you and what you're doing. And if the time comes after you know me, like I love that advice.
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
I have a few more if it's
Please keep them coming. Okay. Keep them coming.
Another piece of advice would be to be silly. I think a lot of people take themselves too seriously. Even artists, we sort of get really rigid and say like, this is serious work. And sometimes it is serious work, but I think if we can laugh and just find some like delight in the process, and it makes life more pleasurable, makes things less, I don't know, strict. So I highly encourage everyone to be silly. And sorry, I've got a final one.
No, and then please do. There's no sorries.
Final bit of advice is that you never leave behind any experience that you have gained in the past. So, I studied design and then went to go study biology, but I never lost my design skills. I brought those with me, and they've sort of become this superpower that I have. Other people in grad school don't have those skills, and it's been a great asset. So that's my advice.
Yeah, that is some powerful superpower related advice. And I think, just the example of yours is going to help people to acknowledge their superpowers and hopefully treat them as such, because it's a really great way to shift our perspective about what we bring to the table, and how we can collaborate with people. So just before we conclude, I'd love to know what you want people to leave knowing about you and about your work, and what are you looking forward to, Kristen?
I think I want everyone to know that I'm cheering for them if they're trying to combine interests, or, I have a feeling everyone wants to combine interests, that everyone has multiple parts of themselves that they want to bring together. So just know that I am championing you. Also, things I'm looking forward to probably include this little game that I've created.
Yes,
and
you have to complete that, because it's the funnest thing.
Okay, so this is about collaboration between artists and scientists. So right now I've got these two bowls with little slips of paper. In one bowl, it is a bunch of artist professions, and one bowl is a bunch of scientist professions. And so, Kara, I'll let you tell me when to stop, and I'll pick one of you.
Stop.
Okay. So now that I've picked one of both, I'll read them and we can imagine a collaboration that
Just to build up some of the like anticipation before you open them, I do want to understand when this, like, how did this?
This just sort of, I don't know. I think I was brainstorming like, how can we get more people to collaborate? Or I think I love when really diverse professionals like get together and create things. So I was like, how can I create a game or something that that makes that happen more?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm just so excited. What did we come up with?
Okay, well, we got a particularly weird one. Okay, so we got a nutritionist and a tattoo artist.
Wow. Wow.
So
Okay.
can you think of a collaboration that they would do together?
Well, I think a lot of nutrition is a mental kind of thing, right? Like you have to be in the mindset that you want to fuel your body and
Mhm.
things like that. And I think tattoos, I always get tattoos that inspire me in a certain way. So I think
Mhm.
if you had a nutritionist and a tattoo artist come up with a collaboration that's like mindful health and wellness tattoos,
Yes. Wow.
here for it. I would get one. I'd put it like right on my
Amazing.
forehead or
Yes.
maybe in my lip or something.
I love that.
Oh my gosh. What about you? Would you do something different?
Well, so often with this, I like to think about how can the nutritionist bring their expertise to, um, the tattoo artist, and vice versa. How can the tattoo artist bring their expertise to the food scientist or nutritionist? And so, yeah, this is a tricky one, but uh, I love the idea of the wellness. Let's see, what else can we think of? Maybe just like bringing healthy snacks to people that are getting tattooed, like maybe it's a
It's
stressful
an
thing.
intervention space too to just talk about like what's the story behind this, like
Right, right.
cultivate goodness in your life.
Yes, you're spending a long time on the tattoo table getting a tattoo, like might as well have someone like,
And maybe there's a smoothie bar. I'm not opposed.
yes, a resource.
Or okay, wait, now you've got my wheels really turning, which is so fun. So like not exactly nutrition, but I think that there's a lot of cognizance about, whether the stuff you put in your body is going to kill you, right? Like you can't give people poison. There's regulation for that. But every time I get a tattoo, I'm like, I hope it's safe. It seems clean, but I don't really know. So maybe the nutritionist provides some sort of regulation framework.
Right. Yeah, no, totally. That's how they could bring their expertise. Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh, I would play this game. This is like the only game that I like.
It's so fun. Yeah.
Fun. Now I want to like pitch all these ideas. I want to start 100 companies.
No, I know it feels like a really great way to generate ideas. And I mean, the dream would be to reach out to people and make these collaborations happen.
Oh my gosh. So if anyone does this, cite Kristen because this is her idea and it's so cool and we don't want it slipping away, but go forth with it because I need to use this in my life. Oh, thank you so much, Kristen. It's been such a treat in like every way. I'm so excited to share your story. Thank you again.
Thank you, Kara.